Like, why is this a thing? Why is this a trope that's used? I don't like it. It's weird. Have I just gotten really bad at talking about how I feel about books? Probably. Hello, good morning, or good evening whenever you are watching this. I hope you are doing well. My name is Catherine, and welcome to my January reading wrap-up. In the month of January, I read a total of 14 books with an average rating of 3.46 stars. I am very proud of how many books I read. However, I wouldn't say this was necessarily my best reading month just in terms of the types of books I was reading. As you'll see in a moment, I read some really fantastic books and other books were... well, you'll see. Without any further ado, let's just get right into it. The first couple books that I read were part of the 12 Days of Bookmas Readathon that I hosted with my good friend Em from Bookish Potatoes. I did do a whole reading vlog of me reading all these books, so you can hear like some of my more in-depth thoughts there. It's a little chaotic. So the first book that I read in January was The 12 Dates of Christmas by Jenny Bayliss. This was our group read for that readathon, and I'm sorry. I wanted to really like this book. I had high hopes when we read the description and when we chose this book out for our group read, but you know, things happen. This book follows Kate Turner, who is like done with the whole dating scene. She's kind of over it, and as part of her like sort of last-ditch attempt to find the one, she signs up for this thing called the 12 Dates of Christmas, where basically she goes on 12 dates kind of set up by this dating service, all leading up till Christmas, hopefully where she'll find the one. I ended up giving this book a like 2.5 stars. It wasn't terrible. I did really like the concept, but there were so many issues that I had with the book. First of all, it was so incredibly predictable. Like, I basically knew who she was going to end up with by page 1. And honestly, I would have been okay with that, except for the fact that like her and that person didn't really have that much chemistry. The idea of her going on these 12 dates just sounded like a lot of fun and like a lot of chaos, and just all of the dates ended up being really boring. The second half of the book did pick up, but oh man, to just get to that halfway point was a struggle. I also definitely questioned like the legitimacy of this dating service. They just didn't know what they were doing for most of the time, and considering it seemed like she spent a lot of money on them, you'd think they'd do a better job. It was cute, it was light, it was fluffy. Like, in the end I did have a good time reading it. I guess I expected a lot more. I shouldn't have. Things did turn around for me with my second book, which was Passenger by Alexandra Bracken. This book follows Hedda Spencer, who is supposed to make her violin debut at, I believe, the like Met Gala. The Met Gala? Is that it? No. She's at, yeah, some sort of like fundraiser for them. She's supposed to like debut how skilled of a violinist she is. Something happens and she ends up being taken back in time. Turns out there is this whole world of people who have these abilities to travel back in time, including herself. There she meets Nicholas Carter, who is just so sweet. I absolutely adored him, and a lot of things happen. She finds out that like her mom hasn't been totally honest with her family's past, and there are a lot of secrets that she has to uncover. I ended up giving this book 5 stars. I thought it was such a cool concept for a time travel book, and I loved all the characters. Both our main characters and a lot of our side characters were just so fascinating and complex. I thought that the world that it took place in was really cool, and I loved the fact that there were like limits to people's powers. There was a very strict set of rules of like how the time traveling works and all of that, and I felt like because it had those limits set up, it made it so much more realistic, and I was like more invested in the story. Hedda and Nicholas's relationship was so sweet. There was a little bit of that like kind of insta love that happened, and I honestly didn't really mind it at all. I normally really don't care for insta love, but I really enjoyed their relationship in this book. I also did enjoy the fact that because Nicholas is Black, a lot of issues were addressed, because like it could be like handled really poorly having a Black man time travel back in time into like colonial America. for obvious reasons. I personally thought that like that whole issue was handled really well, and it was definitely addressed that Nicholas wasn't afforded the same freedoms that people like Etta or the other time travelers were able to have because of his skin color. I did also read the sequel of Wayfarer. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I still thought that it was absolutely fantastic. There was a little bit in the middle where it was getting a little bit repetitive, and that's the only reason why I like knocked it down a star, was because of like, okay, we get it. We get what's happening. Let's move on. I still thought that it was like an absolutely beautiful book. I loved it. I was at the edge of my seat the entire time. There were so many times where it was like, just this one thing happened, everything would work out, and of course it just, yeah, anyway. That was my very unclear way of saying I love these books. Next up was These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This is a Romeo and Juliet retelling that takes place in 1920s Shanghai. This book was one of my most anticipated releases of 2020, and it did not disappoint. This book follows Juliet Kai and Roman Montague. Yeah, they're the daughter and son of 2 prominent gangs in Shanghai. What's really cool about this book is it is a lovers to enemies to reluctant allies to maybe lovers, who knows. I mean, it's Romeo and Juliet, so like, you know, but it's more complex than that. These two had a forbidden romance back when they were 15. Something happened, and now this takes place 4 years later, so they're both now 19. I really enjoyed the fact that they were older and we get to see them as the 19-year-olds instead of the 15-year-olds, because I feel like it definitely put a lot more weight on everything that they were doing. When a sort of mysterious sickness, so yes, there is a little bit of a pandemic plot line, so beware of that when reading this book. But when a mysterious sickness is causing a lot of problems, the two of them end up having to team up together in order to figure out what is causing this, what is going on. I thought that this was such a fantastic way to retell the Romeo and Juliet story. First of all, there are a lot of the like iconic scenes. You get the masquerade, you get the like balcony scene, things like that. However, it totally like twists it and flips it on its head to fit this sort of world and atmosphere. I just really love this story. I'm so excited for the second one. I thought all the characters were so complex and so rich, including like our sort of Mercutio and Benvolio type characters. I loved them. I'm very excited for the sequel, and it needs to come sooner. Like, seriously. The next book that I read was Where Dreams Descend by Janella and Jealous. This book follows Kalia, who is a very powerful magician, and she has spent her whole life working at the Hellfire House, which is a sort of like nightclub. She trains with the owner of the club, Jack, and follows his very strict rules. But she finds out that he might not be the best person in the world. She wants so much more for her life, and she ends up running away to a neighboring town and joining a competition for magicians. Giving this 4 stars. It is beautifully atmospheric. I love the characters and the competition and the whole just overall plot and storyline of the story. It does have very like flowery writing style, and it definitely keeps you on the edge of your seat. I did have like 2 major complaints though about it that kept me from giving it 5 stars, because I was like very enthralled the entire time, and it's very fast paced and kept me like engaged the whole time. My 2 major complaints though were, first of all, the ending, the like last 20 pages, I still have no idea what happened at the end of the book. I like reread it a second time and I'm like, wait, so what? And I feel like part of the ending was supposed to confuse you and be like, wait, so what happened? But part of me is like, am I just stupid? Do I just like not understand? Which like very much could be the case, honest. But yeah, I was real confused at that ending. My second complaint is So this doesn't take place in our world. This isn't like a historical fiction or anything like that. So why in these fantasy worlds do we feel the need to have sexism as like a very major plot? You know, it's a very major device that is used, and it's used in so many different fantasy worlds, but it's used to like move everything forward and as like a big obstacle to what the main character needs. Basically, one of the big things is that, of course, like, men magicians are taken seriously, but women can't be magicians, and I don't know. For some reason, that like thing being used in like fantasy worlds, I just don't get it. I don't get why we need to bring that into a fantasy world and why we can't use other obstacles. I did really like this story though. Like, it didn't turn me off that bad. It annoyed me at times. Next up, I read the first 3 books in the Bridgerton series. So The Duke and I, The Viscount Who, what is it called? The Viscount Who Loved Me, and An Offer from a Gentleman, all by Julia Quinn. I am actually going to be talking about those in a future reading vlog, so stay tuned for that. It should be coming out, I don't know, a couple weeks. My video schedule is, who knows. Overall though, I expected more. That's all I'm gonna leave you guys with. I expected more and I expected better. I don't know how I could expect too much better from a like romance novel written in 2002. Like, I shouldn't have expected that much better, but I did. Anyway, you'll get my thoughts on those in a future video, so stay tuned and subscribe. Then I read In 5 Years by Julia Seal. That's not right. Rebecca Serle. I was not even close. Next, I read In 5 Years by Rebecca Serle. That is the name of the author. This book is about Dani, who is on her way to her perfect life. She has like the perfect fiance. She just like nailed her job interview to work for a law firm or something. I don't know, do lawyery things. Overall, her vision board is coming to life. She has manifested everything she wants in life, and it is coming true. But when she takes a little bit of a nap and wakes up, she is 5 years in the future and her entire life is different. She's in a different apartment. She has a different man. She doesn't know who or what she is. So she lives that different life for about an hour and then wakes back up to the present time, so no longer in the future. And she is just totally shaken. She has no idea what's going on. Yeah, and she can't stop thinking about this guy that she met. Until 4.5 years later when she meets him again. Because, spoiler alert, he's dating her best friend. I should have known after reading One Day in December and this book being like, if you like this book, then read this book, that they would have some more plot lines to that. And they did. I did end up giving this book 3 stars because I ended up liking it a lot more. I felt like it was a lot more heartfelt. The friendship in this book felt so much more real and also just hurt my heart so much. Overall, I just really liked the characters. There were definitely some things where I'm like, stop lusting after your best friend's boyfriend. Like, why is this a thing? Why is this a trope that's used? I don't like it. It's weird. However, the ending like kind of made up for a lot of that. So yeah, overall, it was good. I don't know. I may drop it down to 2.5 stars. It's bordering between those. It never like dragged or anything, and I did enjoy some of the relationships. Have I just gotten really bad at talking about how I feel about books? Probably. I feel like I get worse and worse the more wrap-up videos that I do. Next, I read Meet the Sky by McCall Hoyle. This book is about Sophie, whose life completely changed when her dad and sister get in a accident, making her dad like leave the family, and her sister can barely walk and also has some like brain injury problems. So Sophie is like very much taking care of her family. When a massive hurricane is headed straight for their town, she ends up getting separated from her mom and her sister, and she ends up in the company of Finn Sanders, her like neighbor who like left and then he came back. I was kind of not clear. I can't really, I'll be real, I can't really remember what happened in this book. But they end up having to like write out this hurricane together. I ended up giving it 3 stars. It was good, but it wasn't really anything special. I also like wanted to shake both of the characters and being like, what are you doing? There's a hurricane. There are more important things happening than your feelings. Also, like, I'm pretty sure if all the things that happened in this book actually happened to a human being, they would be dead like 3 different times. Like, the fact that I don't want to spoil anything, but these characters should have died so many times. However, it's like a very short, fast-paced book, so like it wasn't bad. I just was like, what is going on? Next, I read 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake by MacLean. Everything I wanted out of The Duke and I, this book had. This follows Lady Calpurnia Hartwell, who has very much accepted that she is a spinster. She is going to live her life as a spinster. And she has realized that following the rules of society has gotten her nowhere. She is alone, unmarried, single, no prospects.
I'm already a burden to my parents and I'm frightened.
She ends up getting the Marquess of Ralston, a notorious rake, to help her complete a list of things that she has always wanted to do, but they are like inappropriate for a lady to do. It's very much like a historical romance, Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and I loved it. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I really just enjoyed, first of all, I loved Calpurnia. I thought that she was such a fun, dynamic character. Her like kind of going after what she wants and being like, screw it. Like, if me being the perfect lady hasn't gotten me anything that I want in life, then I'm gonna go live my life. I also loved her like relationship with her brother, who was like, I'm gonna help you live your life. This is gonna be great. And of course there was the Marquess of Ralstings, who their whole relationship was a lot of fun. I did end up giving it 4 stars, mostly because I think this is a thing in historical romances where like the guy is just too controlling. I think it's just a me thing where I'm like, the whole like alpha male type trope where they're like, I know what's best for you and I'm gonna take care of it. It just doesn't do it for me. If a man ever had the audacity to be like, I know what's best for you, no. Also, I do love the fact that Calpurnia is plus sized. It doesn't show it in the cover because of course not, but she is, and that is like something that comes up, but it isn't like a huge like issue. So many times if a character is plus size, they're like, that becomes their entire personality, but it wasn't, and I loved that. So yeah, 4, maybe even 4.5 stars. Honestly, borderline 4.5 stars. Just not 5 stars because the audacity of that man. Speaking of the Brown sisters, I did also read Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. This book is about Dani Brown, so the second of the Brown sisters, who is she is a very like career-driven woman. She like is very focused on her writing and very focused on her teaching. She is a master's student. She's getting her master's, her PhD, her master's. Either way, she does not have time for a relationship and is looking for a new friends with benefits type situation. After a video of her friend Zephyr saving her goes viral, the two of them agree to have a fake relationship, fake dating situation that would like mutually benefit the two of them. He has to keep up appearances because he runs a nonprofit that he's trying to get publicity for that focuses on like guys experiencing emotion, which is so good. He definitely, his whole like outlook on life reminds me of Justin, oh what's his name? You know, Raphael from Jane the Virgin, and his whole thing of like, guys, it's okay to feel things, and I love that. I also gave this book 4 stars. I loved these characters. I thought they were amazing. If I was reading this book purely on how well could I project my insecurities on Dani, 5 out of 5 stars. There was a couple times I had to pause my audiobook and being like, you didn't have to call me out like that. Like, rude. But I ended up giving it 4 stars because, well, I loved the story. I loved the characters and their relationships and their like back and forth banter and overall just everything about it. One of the things is that Zafir loves romance novels, and like in the middle it gets really preachy about how wonderful romance novels are, and I just can't take a book seriously when it like is that like self-congratulatory. So is that a word? It's a word now. I had a similar issue with Beach Reads by Emily Henry, where I'm like, I mean, I get that you're a romance novel and you're like, romance novels should be taken seriously as real literature, but you don't have to like promote yourself in your own book. So that definitely took me out of the story a couple times. So 4 stars. Last but not least, I read Shadow and Bone and Siege and Storm as part of our Grishaverse read-along. We read them during the month of January, and I had so much fun as part of this read-along. If you want to join our read-along, there is still plenty of time. We have about 3 weeks where we're reading Rune and Rising, so there's definitely time to like catch up and read Shadow and Bone and Siege and Storm during that time if you so choose. This was a reread for me. I have already read all the books in the Grishaverse because I adore this world so much. The first trilogy in particular follows a girl named Alina who is very ordinary. She's nothing special. She's like in love with her best friend, you know, all of the classic 2013 YA fantasy tropes, and then she finds out that there may be more to her than meets the eye. I just find the world that the Grishaverse takes place in is so like rich and fun. Like, I have such a good time reading these stories. Are they very typical like 2013 YA fantasy? Totally. Like, if I had read these books for the first time in 2013, when was that? Oh my god. No, I was already in college at that point. If I read these in high school, that's what I'm trying to say. Wow, existential crisis about my age suddenly. I think I would have probably given them all like 5 stars and been like, this is the best piece of media ever. Being as the first time I read them was like 2019, not quite there, but I still love them. I love the characters. I love the dynamics. I do really enjoy the magic system, even though it's not anything like particularly special. I ended up giving this 4 stars, and I gave Siege and Storm, you know, I'm giving that one 4 stars as well. I was a little back and forth of if it was like 3.5 or 4 stars, because there are like parts towards the middle that like kind of lag a little bit, and you're like, okay, we get it, you're walking. But overall, like, especially since you're introduced to a certain character in this one that I just adore with all my heart and soul, 4 stars as well. Those were all the books that I read in the month of January. You know, despite having some meh books in there, I overall had like a good time with all of my reading. I did get into a little bit of a slump like during the last week of January, but I already feel like I'm pulling myself out of it, which is like great news. Love that for me. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know what your thoughts were. I'm always curious to know if people have different or similar opinions to me. Thank you so much for watching. If you did like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to hit subscribe. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and until next time, bye!